Police have common law powers to exclude the public from an area in which a police operation is underway. Is that correct?
Yes.
And those powers could have been used in the clearing of the protests in Ottawa, couldn't they?
Yes.
In fact, you planned on using those powers to clear the protests, and the federal emergency declaration did not significantly impact your planning. Is that right?
I wouldn't exactly say that. Very, very hard to know what it would have been like without it.
Right. Your interview summary does say that, but I'll leave it. I'll leave that answer as is. You would have carried out the planned police operation whether the government declared a public order emergency or not, though. Isn't that right?
Correct. The planning and the concept of operation was already in place, and I didn't have any knowledge that an Emergencies Act was going to be put in place.
Counsel for Canada earlier on today put it to you that, and I'm paraphrasing a bit, you never know whether your use of a common law exclusion zone will hold up in court if it's challenged after the fact. Do you remember that question?
Yes.
If police proceeded as planned and relied on common law exclusion zone powers to clear the protest, the fact that those powers might have been challenged after the fact wouldn't change the fact that the protests had already been cleared, would it?
That is correct.
All right. So would you agree that the federal emergency power to create exclusion zones may have been helpful to police, but it was not necessary?
Once again, I think it was beneficial.
Beneficial, but not necessary.
Correct.
Thank you. Counsel for Canada showed you a letter dated February 17th, 2022, earlier on today, which appeared to be a letter from OPP Commissioner Carrick to tow truck drivers. You had never seen that letter before it was shown to you today, is that right?
Correct.
You have no direct knowledge of whether that letter was ever even sent to tow truck drivers, do you?
Correct.
And until you were shown the letter today, you didn't believe that the police had used the powers granted under the Emergencies Act to compel towing services, isn't that right?
Correct. Myself and my whole command table.
Right. Your planning to clear the protests didn't rely on the emergency power to compel tow truck services, correct?
That was my belief at the time.
All right. And in fact, tow trucks were already on their way to Ottawa as of February 13th, weren't they?
That was the information that is provided through Inspector Springer from Kirk Richardson.
Great. You briefly mentioned when speaking to Counsel for Canada that you personally saw tow trucks arriving in Canada. When did those tow trucks arrive?
They're definitely well before the 17th, before our final day before going into action, they were arriving.
Right. So by the time that February 17th letter was sent, if it ever was sent, the tow trucks were already in Ottawa, weren't they?
That would be my observation, because I would look out and I'd see the trucks out there.
Right. So would you agree that the federal emergency power to compel towing services may have been helpful to police and maybe beneficial to police, but it wasn't necessary to enable police to clear the protests, was it?
Yes. However, with a caveat that we were having challenges. We were having a hard time up until that time on the 13th. So prior to the 13th, I would have said we could have used some help with that. But as things materialized on the 13th, I was satisfied that we were good.
And you were satisfied that we were good. You're satisfied that the federal emergency power to compel tow trucks wasn't necessary.
Correct.
Thank you. Interim Chief Bell testified pretty emphatically, and I quote, "In the absence of the invocation of the Emergencies Act, the OPS, the OPP, the RCMP, as part of a unified command, were going to clear the protests." Would you agree with that statement?
Could you repeat that question again, please?
In the absence of the invocation of the Emergencies Act, the OPS, the OPP, the RCMP, as part of a unified command, were going to clear the protests. Do you agree with that statement?
Yes.
Numerous other OPP and OPS witnesses have testified that the federal emergency powers may have been helpful to police in various ways, but they were not necessary. Would you agree with that?
Yes.